When Barron Trump walked into a high-end restaurant, he didn't expect his MAGA had to spark a public showdown. What happened next not only shocked the manager, but left an entire city talking. It was a sunny afternoon in New York, the kind that tempts you to slow down and savor the day. Barron Trump, now in his late teens, had just wrapped up a quiet morning of reading and decided to treat himself to lunch. He chose La Terrace, a renowned restaurant known for its blend of sophistication and exclusivity, the kind of place where every table seems to hold a story. Celebrities, CEOs, influencers. She'd been there before, always enjoying the serene atmosphere and impeccable service. As she walked through the glass doors, Barron stood out not just because of his stature, but because of the bright red MAGA hat perched on his head. He wore it with ease, the way one wears something they're comfortable with, not intending to provoke, but simply expressing a part of themselves. She was greeted by the hostess, a woman in her mid-40s with a polished demeanor, who seated him near a corner tablet. The restaurant wasn't crowded. A few dinners sipped their wine and exchanged muted conversations. Barron opened the menu, his expression calm, ashes canned for his favorite dish. Hadn't noticed the glances at first. A man at the next table, nudging his partner, a couple of waitstaff, whispering near the bar, but then the manager emerged. The man, mid-50s, sharp suits, harp voice, walked briskly to Barron's table, his face tight with determination. "Excuse me," he said, loud enough to draw attention. "We have a policy against political apparel here. I'm going to have to ask you to remove the hat." Barron looked up, surprised but not rattled. "Here, move." Ed his earbuds and placed them on the table. "I wasn't aware of any policy like that," he replied calmly. His voice was steady, respectful, but firm. "It's written in our code of conduct." The manager insisted, gesturing vaguely towards the entrance. "We want this to be a neutral space for all guests." Barron tilted his head slightly, weighing his options. He glanced around. Some dinners were pretending not to listen, while others openly stared. "I'm not trying to cause any trouble," he said, keeping his tone neutral. "I'm just there for lunch." The manager's stances stiffened. "You need to take." He had to offer. "I'll have to ask you to leave." Barron paused, his expression unreadable. Then, with a slight nod, he pushed his chair back and stood. "If that's how you feel," he said evenly, "then I'll leave." The room fell into an awkward hush. As Barron picked up his belongings, she left behind his untouched glass of water, walking out of the restaurant without another word. The door closed softly behind him, but the tension inside lingered thick as smoke outside the restaurant. Barron paused for a moment, letting the warm California breeze brush against his face. Head adjusted his hat's lig, reaffirming his choice to wear it, and took a deep breath. He wasn't angry, frustrated maybe, but more than anything he felt disappointed. He had always been taught to treat people with kindness, even when disagreements arose, and this felt like a betrayal of that principle. Inside the restaurant was abuzz with quiet murmurs. A waiter leaned in to whisper to the manager, "Do you think that was a good idea?" "That's him." The manager waved him off. "We can't make exceptions. If we let them stay, it sends the wrong message. This is my restaurant, and I'll run it as I see fit." Meanwhile, Barron walked a few blocks down to a small public park. He found an empty bench and sat down, pulling out his phone. He began typing, first to his mother, letting her know what had happened, and then to a few close friends. She wasn't looking for sympathy, just clarity. Was she overreacting? Was the manager justified? Within minutes, replies started pouring in. One friend texted, "That's insane. They shouldn't have treated you like that." Another added, "You handled it better than I would have." As she scrolled through his messages, an idea began to form in his mind. He wasn't interested in revenge or a public showdown. Instead, he's on opportunity, something constructive, something meaningful. If the restaurant wanted to avoid political statements, then why not highlight the importance of unity and understanding? Instead, Barron stood up, determination sparking in his eyes. He started making calls, his voice calm but filled with purpose. "Hey, I need your help with something," he said into the receiver. The first of many conversations that would set this plan in motion. Back at the restaurant, the atmosphere was uneasy. Word of what had happened began spreading through social media. A southern diner shared their accounts online. They kicked out Barron Trump for a hat, one post read, accompanied by a blur. "Rifo tooth the incident." Another chimed in, "Freedom of expression. Guess not at lat Araseth." The manager's scrolling through his phone at the bar began to Velak not form in his stomach. The comment section was already filling up, and not all of it was supportive. Let them talk, he muttered to himself, trying to shake off the growing sense of regret. But deep down, he knew the situation was spiraling out of control. By the time Barron returned home, the incident had already started making waves online. A few local influencers had picked up the story, their captions ranging from "Sup, Portevet polarizing Barron glanced at the posts briefly but didn't dwell on them. He wasn't interested in fueling drama or dividing people further. His focus was on doing something that could turn this negativity into a positive outcomes. Sitting at this desk, Barron jotted down notes in a small leather-bound notebook, had thought about the interaction she'd had that day, not just with the manager, but with the people watching, the silent judgments, the curious stares. What could he do that would encourage dialogue rather than conflict, the wanted to challenge the divas? Vesputin, a way that felt personal and impactful. The idea clicked almost out of nowhere, a public fundraiser, not just any fundraiser, but toned with a clear unifying message. He envisioned an event that would support underprivileged communities, particularly focusing on creating safe spaces for open conversation and understanding. He picked up his phone and made a call. Hit hisses Barron Trump. "You need some advice on organizing a charity event." "Yes, it's urgent. Could we meet tomorrow?" The person on the other end seemed surprised but quickly agreed as the evening progressed. Barron's plan took shape. He drafted a proposal for the fundraiser, deciding to set up right outside Laderass. He wanted the location to emphasize theme sedge, that even in places of conflict unity could find its way. A close friend agreed to help with logistics, and within hours the wheels were in motion. Meanwhile, at the restaurant, the fallout was intensifying. The manager's decision was no longer a private matter. It had become a public debate. News outlets began reporting on the incident, quoting eyewitness accounts. Some articles painted Baroness a victim of intolerance, while others defended the restaurant's right to enforce its policies. The restaurant's social media pages were flooded with comments. Some users praised the manager for standing his ground, but others called for boycotts, arguing that the decision reeked of hypocrisy. One comment read, "So much for a neutral space. Kicking someone out isn't neutral, it's picking a side." The laugh Taraska could feel the tension. Regular customers canceled reservations, and the once bustling restaurant was noticeably quieter. The manager, who had initially felt confident about his stance, now found himself grappling with second thoughts. She told himself it would blow over, but deep down he wasn't so sure. As night fell, Barron prepared for what was to come. He knew the fundraiser wouldn't erase at the incident, but he hoped it could shift the focus towards something constructive. The world didn't need more shouting matches, it needed moments of connection, even in the most unlikely circumstances. The following morning, the quiet block in front of La Harsa began to transform. Trucks unloaded equipment as volunteers set up tables, banners, and a small stage. Barron stood at the center of it all, overseeing the arrangements, the banner above the stage reading bold letters, "United West," and "Building bridges, not wall." She'd reached out to several organizations that focused on community building, youth mentorship, and dialogue facilitation. The fundraiser wasn't just about raising money, it was about creating a space where people from different walks of life could come together. Food trucks, live music, and booths for local charities lined the sidewalk, turning what had been a source of conflict into a vibrant community event. By midday, the crowd started to gather: families, young professionals, activists, and even a few family. Our face from social media showed up. Barron took the microphone to address the audience. His voice was steady but filled with emotion. "Yesterday I was asked to leave this restaurant because of a hat. That's okay. I respect their policies, even if I don't agree with them. But what struck me wasn't just being turned away, it was the bigger picture. We've become so quick to each other to take sides, to shut down conversations. That's not who where we can do better." The crowd erupted in applause, and Barron continued, "This event isn't about me, and it's not about them. It's about all of us, finding ways to listen, to understand, and to come together. The funds we're raised today will go toward programs that foster dialogue and inclusion. Thank you for being here and proving that unity is stronger than division." The applause was louder this time, and Barron stepped off the stage, shaking hands and thanking attendees personally. His calm demeanor and thoughtful words resonated deeply with those present, many of whom had come out of curiosity, but left feeling inspired. Inside Terraset, the scene was quite different. The manager stood at the window, watching the event unfold. He hadn't expected Barron to respond in this way, and it left him conflicted. Some of his staff had stepped outside to join the fundraiser, unable to resist the pull of the lively music and sense of camaraderie. One waiter who had been there the day before returned to the bar and said quietly, "You should go out there, talk to him." The manager stiffened. "This isn't my fight." "Maybe not," the waiter replied, "but it's definitely your chance." The manager didn't respond. But his expression softened. He poured himself a glass of water and watched as the crowd outside continued to grow. Something about the scene tugged at him, a feeling he hadn't allowed himself to acknowledge until now as the day wore on. The fundraiser outside La Terraza became the talk of the town's social media, was ablaze with live streams, photos, and hashtags like had building bridges and had united West, and all praising Barron's poise and the positive message he was spreading. The event attracted more than just locals. News crews arrived, capturing the vibrant energy of the crowd and Barron's powerful speeches inside the restaurant. It was another story. The once busy dining room was eerily quiet. Tables that were typically reserved weeks in advance now sat empty, and the few patrons who died arrive seemed distracted, glancing outside at the fundraiser as if they were missing out on something meaningful. The manager tried to focus on his work, but the growing tension among his staff was impossible to ignore. A server approached him cautiously. Some customers have been asking about the event. They're saying it looks incredible, and maybe we should go there. The manager's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. Instead, he retreated to his office, closing the door behind him. He's at his desk, staring at this computer screen where dozens of emails flooded in, complaints from customers, cancellation notices, and even a few scathing critiques from local media outlets. An email stood out. It was from a regular customer who had always been cordial and supportive. The message read, "I've always loved Erasab too. Yesterday's incident was deeply disappointing. Kicking someone out for their personal beliefs isn't the neutrality you claim to stand for. It's divisive. I hope you'll find a way to make this right." The word hit harder than he expected. He leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. Was she wrong? Had his decision really been about neutrality, or was it about something else entirely, something he didn't want to admit himself? Meanwhile, outside, the event had reached its peak. Local jazz band played on stage. Children laughed. They painted murals at an art booth, and donation boxes overflowed with contributions. Barron was everywhere, shaking hands, listening to people's stories, and even posing for selfies. He radiated a calm confidence, but it wasn't smug or performative. It was genuine, the kind of composure that comes from knowing you're doing something that truly matters. As the sun dipped lower, casting a warm glow over the scene, a buzz rippled through the crowd. People turned toward the restaurant doors where the manager had just stepped out. He hesitated on the steps, adjusting his nervously before making his way toward Barron. The crowd parted slightly, their chatter phased. They watched the two men approach each other. Barron saw him coming and offered a small, polite smile. Hadn't flinch or step back. Instead, he extended his hand. The manager hesitated for a split second before taking it. "I'd like to talk," he said quietly, his voice almost drowned out by the noise around them. "Of course," Barron replied, gesturing toward a quieter spot near the edge of the event. They walked together. The crowd watched, intently but respectfully, giving them space. Barron and the manager stopped near the edge of the event where the music and chatter were softer, allowing them to speak freely. The manager's face, usually composed and commanding, now carried a hint of unease. He glanced at the crowd behind them, then back at Barron. "I need to start by saying I didn't hand yesterday." "Well," the manager began, his voice low. "I thought I was doing what was best for my restaurant, for my staff, but I realized now that I made a mistake. I judged you and I acted out of fear, not fairness." Barron listened intently, his expression calm but encouraging. "It takes courage to admit when you're wrong," he said after a moment. "Thank you for saying that." The manager exhaled as if a weight had been lifted. "Watching what you've done here today, it's humbling. You could have retaliated, turned this into a public attack on my business, but instead you created something positive. That's not something most people would do." Barron smiled faintly. "I don't think the world needs more anger or division. What happened yesterday could have just added to the noise, but I wanted to show that there's a better way." The manager nodded slowly. "You did, and I'd like to support what you're doing here. If there's a way for me or the restaurant to contribute, I'd be happy." Barron considered this for a moment before responding. "I think the best way to contribute is to reflect on how we treat each other. Policies are important, but they should never come at the expense of kindness and understanding. Maybe La Terraza could host an event like this one, something that brings people together instead of pushing the map art." The manager blinked, clearly caught off guard by the suggestion, but then a small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "I think that's a great idea. Let's make it happen." They shook hands again, this time with genuine warmth. The crowd, sensing the resolution, began to applaud it. wasn't the kind of forced, polite clapping one might expect. It was heartfelt, a sign that everyone recognized the significance of the moment. As the event wound down, Barron took the stage one last time to thank everyone who had come out to support the cause. He ended his speech with a simple but powerful message: "Well, make mistakes. What matters is how we choose to grow from them today." It wasn't just about raising money. It was about showing that even when we disagree, we can still find common ground. Thank you for proving Opportunity isn't just possible, it's necessary. The crowd erupted in cheers, their voices filling the air with hope and energy. As the sun set over New York, Barron stood with his friends and family, watching as the last of the attendees trickled out, carrying with them not just memories of the event, but the message it represented. The story leaves us with a reminder that conflicts, big or small, don't have to end in bitterness or division. By choosing grace, understanding, and proactive solutions, we can turn the most challenging moments into opportunities for connect, ion, and growth. Subscribe to my channel to stay inspired with powerful stories that highlight humanity, compassion, and the positive impact of leadership in real-life situations.